Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Adobe Video Community Meetup. This is actually our October meetup, but we're here in November because we had a little conference last month called Adobe Max, which you might have heard about. I'm Victoria Nece, Principal Product Manager on After Effects, and I've got two great guests joining me today to chat. But first off, I want to introduce a little bit about what this live stream is. So AVC Meetups feature product demos, conversations, Q&A with Adobe product teams like us, and we also love spotlighting existing projects, creative workflows from the community. So this is a virtual event. We do this every month, and it's usually the last Wednesday of the month on our YouTube and Facebook channels. So thanks for joining us today in a special edition. And if you use Premiere Pro, After Effects, Audition, Media Encoder, Character Animator, Photoshop, Animate, all of the above, any of those to create amazing video content, you are a part of the Adobe Video community. So we're really looking forward to chatting with you today, getting to meet you, and giving you a little bit of a peek behind the scenes of what things are like at Adobe. So I'd love to introduce today's guests. First up, we have Catie Bass, and she's another product manager on After Effects. Catie joined the team about 1.5 years ago and has already worked on some pretty big stuff. Say the launch of multi-frame rendering being one of them, and most recently, something we're really excited about from our Max release, selectable track mats. Catie's also focused on our international users and text and typography and accessibility. So if you are a font nerd, you're in the right place. And our second guest today is Kyle Hamrick. He is not only an Emmy-winning motion designer, a video editor, an Adobe certified software trainer, all-around After Effects Premiere nerd, and the creative director for School of Motion. He also created all the demo videos that you're about to see in our Max launch video, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that later too. So feel free to post your comments and questions in the chat pod. I think we have Kevin Monahan, Michelle Galina, and Dacia Sains with us today, all from the Adobe side of things, and they're going to be helping answer questions as well as dropping links into the chat pod for you to see. And so if your colleagues are not able to join us live today, also be sure to check us out. This will be recorded, and it's going to be available on replay shortly after the live stream. And so with that, let's kick things off and take a look at what's new in After Effects as of last month. Check some major time savers off your workflow wish list in the latest version of After Effects. Select any layer anywhere in your composition to use as a track mat. Get creative. Reuse the same mat for multiple layers, invert one to texture your background, and then composite your mat with other layers in your project for a final polish. If you're a frequent track matter, your compositions can get up to 40% simpler and so much faster to edit. Need to get a quick video to social or send your creation to a client or colleague for review? You can now export H.264 via the render queue and take advantage of hardware acceleration for even faster results. New composition presets get you up and running with a revamped list, including sizes for social platforms. Plus, get over 50 new animation presets created by some of the best motion designers in our After Effects community. Fast, fun, and flexible, these presets save you time on the techniques you use most. Navigate the timeline more quickly by holding Shift when you use the J and K keys to jump between markers and those newly colorful keyframes. You'll limit your navigation to just the layers and properties you've selected so you can focus on the details. And we're making your workflow faster even outside of After Effects. When you create motion graphics templates, they'll now render twice as fast thanks to extended support for multi-frame rendering in the latest version of Premiere Pro. We are delivering on your most requested features to make motion design just plain fun to make. Cool. There's so much stuff that's newly available at Max. We're really excited about. We've been working hard on these features, and I think today's theme is all about really boosting your presence on social. So I'd love to kick off this conversation with Catie and talk about a couple of the things that we've just shipped and how they fit in when you're really trying to level up your online brand. So maybe let's start with some of the new presets. Catie, you want to give us a little peek into the process of how we've gotten more than 50 new presets from our After Effects community?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for inviting me here. I may have seen some of you in the chat in previous live streams. This is the first time being on camera, so that's exciting. I'm super excited about our new presets. We have 50 new presets. We worked with community members to design them so that we could really make sure that we were capturing the voice of our users and see what they are interested in what they need to be working for them as far as presets go. And the response we've been getting so far has been really, really awesome. I personally really enjoy them. I use them quite a bit when I'm working on small little demo projects here at the office, and it's really made my life a lot easier.
Do you have a particular favorite preset?
I've been really liking the 3D rotate in. Those ones are by Jake Bartlett, I think. I've used those a lot actually in demoing some of our international text improvements because you can apply them to any language. I use them when I am switching between English and Hebrew on the same text layer to show just how easy it is to make right to left work without workarounds.
Yeah, actually, can you go into a little more detail about that? Because that's something that shipped a little earlier in the year and I think might have been a little under the radar, particularly for English-speaking users, but it's so important when you're delivering especially multiple languages and motion graphics around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been working with an engineer who is kind of a text wizard. He's amazing. He was one of the architects of InDesign, actually. So we are really, really lucky to have him working with us. And he and I have been going through our, I guess not user voice anymore, our user forums to see what people are finding to be kind of difficulties with international text. Knowing, going through what we already know are difficulties with international text. And one of the first things that we worked on together was, and I didn't know this until I came to the team because I exclusively work in English and Japanese, both of which are left to right languages. But text animation for languages that run from right to left, so Arabic, Hebrew, etc., previously didn't animate in the right to left order. It would actually animate backwards. So the designer would have to go in and do a whole bunch of workarounds just to make their text animate in the correct order, which is really a terrible experience, really not ideal, to say the absolute least. So Douglas and I took that as one of our first action items. And as of 22.5, which came out in June, I believe, any time that you are typing in a right to left language and apply animation, it will just animate in the correct order. No more backwards animation, it just works. Text layers will now also pick up whether you're typing in a right to left language or a left to right. So if you have a single text layer with some mixed languages, the animation will be appropriate for whichever language is being animated at that moment.
And that's a really big step. That's something people have been asking for decades. And I'm super excited that that's finally shipped because it's just going to make delivering stuff that much easier. And it's the kind of thing that as product managers, we can see it unlock like we talk about the business side of this, of how do you unlock different communities, different regions of the world. And sometimes it's things like that might otherwise be invisible, where people are doing really weird workarounds, animating things backwards, all kinds of things like that, and making it that much easier and that much more accessible to really express yourself in your language. I think it's really meaningful work. And on that note, I'd love to talk a little more about what we actually do as product managers, because I think that's something we could talk about sort of behind the scenes here. And a great thing to talk about might be Innovation Week and track mats, because this was our big headline feature at Max. It's something the response has been incredible, and it's really making it easier to make a much more complicated project quickly. If you haven't seen the selectable track mats, basically what it is the old way of doing things. You had to have a mat above a layer if you wanted to set it to use its transparency. And if you had lots of layers that you want with the same transparency, you had to duplicate that layer for every single one of them. So if you had text that you wanted to fill with animated patterns, every one of those patterns would have a separate copy of the text. And that's painful when suddenly you need to change the text. Now you need to edit every one of those layers. And that can really slow you down, especially when you're on a social timeline where you need to deliver quickly. So given that we had this much slower process, that's one of the things that we said, how can we make this faster? And this is where Innovation Week comes in. And Catie, can you tell us a little bit of the story of how we got from having 1 million copies of your text to just one layer, change something once, and your project we've seen 40%, 50% simpler projects.
I think actually 60% in some cases, which is pretty mind-blowing. So yeah, Innovation Week, twice a year, we kind of stop all work that we're working on and spend a week just working on our big ideas. And that can be very personal. So for me, example, as a product manager, a lot of time Innovation Week is time for me to really catch up and spend a lot of time diving into the Adobe forums, for example. And I always try to keep an eye on this on a daily, weekly basis, but sometimes things kind of just get a little out of control calendar-wise when you're a product manager. So having Innovation Week to really innovate on the voice of the customer is something I look forward to. And our engineers in a lot of ways, because they, for the most part, most of our engineers were users before they became our engineers. They have a lot of deeply held opinions, and they have a really, really great handle on what can cause issues for the user to a level that I've never seen for the engineering team anywhere else that I've worked. We're really, really lucky on the After Effects team in that regard. So two of our engineers during Innovation Week decided to team up and produce a prototype of what became to be known as selectable track mats. And it was pretty mind-blowing. It brought the house down. At the end of every Innovation Week, we have people present what they worked on. You don't have to present what you worked on. So if you did something boring like me, like assemble a list of what customer concerns are, which is very important, but doesn't make a very splashy demo. So they brought the house down at the presentations, and I remember a product team meeting right after presentation where we all sat down and we were like, we need to make this happen. This is going to be amazing. And I especially was really excited because unlike many people on our team, I am not a designer by background. So in many regards, I tend to represent the After Effects novice perspective. And a little secret about me is before selectable track mats happened, I had never successfully track matted. I had done School of Motion classes, I had done trainings, I'd followed along with online tutorials, and I could just never make it happen. Something with the way the old structure was made just did not click in my brain. So having selectable track mats, I was like, this is going to make a big deal for a lot of people, not just me, although selfishly also me. So we jumped in and started designing and started bringing that prototype to life.
And I think this really speaks to one of the things that's special about the After Effects team, special about the Premiere team and the video teams at Adobe in general. And apologies, my phone is ringing. That was weird. But one of the things that we spend so much time talking to users. It's part of every day. Things like this are just one example. And we're talking to people around the world. We're talking to people online. But so much of our job is to say, what do people need most? What's going to make a big difference in someone's day? And if we can make a project 50% simpler, that's hours of somebody's day back. And that's really meaningful stuff. And so we really try to look for what are the things we can do that are going to have that kind of impact. And speaking about going to talk to customers around the world, Catie, I'd also love for you to share a little bit about your recent trip, because you've gotten to see people in several places.
I have. So about a month ago, I returned from what I've called the Grand After Effects Global Circumnavigation, where I left Seattle and joined the team in Amsterdam for the International Broadcasters Conference, where I worked on the booth pretty much the whole week, which was a fantastic opportunity to talk to people face-to-face. Some people who I'd interacted with on the forums came and said hi, which was super exciting to put a face to the name. And I learned a lot about different use cases. I met several design students even, so getting the input from design students and hearing what might be really of interest to people in terms of what's coming on the horizon, what people want to learn, that's so valuable. And then from there, I went on to Paris and London, where in Paris, I was at the Motion Plus Design event, where I got to speak to an incredible community of European motion designers and got to have some really, really in-depth, nerdy conversations about fonts in particular, which made my day. Because fonts are really cool. They're so cool. From a technological standpoint, from a design standpoint, it's the coolest. And we got to hear about some, feedback that people want, what people want to see, what people think could be better. I personally love hearing what people think could be better. I think sometimes people might worry about giving that feedback because they might worry about hurting people's feelings. But we always want to know how we can do better. And it's really what drives us as product managers, especially. And I think, not to speak for our engineering teams, but I'm pretty sure it's what drives our engineers as well. So yeah, and then met with some users in London at our Shoreditch offices. However, due to some government events in London, it was a bit of a smaller group than we had originally planned for. But honestly, I think that was a great thing because we got to spend, in some cases, hours sitting with particular people. And I have like a 12-page document on my phone because I'd forgotten a notebook that's just notes from that event, which was fantastic. So yeah, from there, I went on to Seoul, South Korea, where we primarily met with broadcast users, but did get a little bit of insight into social media creators. And it's just really, really great to see how different people's workflows can be depending on what they're working on at a given moment. And also where the commonalities are. And once again, that comes back to fonts and type, because at the end of the day, 98% of people are going to need fonts and type at some level, whether it's just credits or other titles, for example, or other use cases. And then moved on to Tokyo, Japan, where I met with a number of social video creators, actually. I met with Daikyo Security, which was a very cool TikTok group. If you're not following them on TikTok, the New York Post actually just did a post on them. They are a physical security group who have made it big on TikTok, doing kind of like office pranks and dancing together and showing a really, really cool work culture, which has driven a lot of interest from job applicants, actually. So a really, really cool example of how the work that you do on a graphics level and the work that we do at the After Effects team can actually translate to some amazing real world impacts.
And I think that really speaks to the variety of users that we have. And that's one of the interesting challenges with product management for After Effects in particular is people are using it in so many different ways. And so what we're talking about today is all about delivering for social. And so I think next up, we're going to kick off a video from Kyle Hamrick, who's going to show us a really great way, especially if you've never used After Effects as a great first project kind of project, to start bringing that motion, creativity, and life into your social posts. And so this is just one way of using After Effects, but I think it's a great first step, especially for the newer folks. So let's take a look.
Hey, Kyle here from School of Motion. It's easy to get intimidated by all the different tools and techniques to learn when you're just getting into motion graphics. But things don't need to be complex to be effective, especially when you're creating for social media. Sometimes it's just a matter of figuring out the right elements to focus on and moving them in a simple but meaningful way. So I'm here in Photoshop looking at this 3-panel layout our designer sent over for a social media ad. We could certainly make a basic animation with these as is, but if we take a step back and analyze what we actually have to work with, I'm noticing that the backgrounds of these 3 layouts actually have a really nice natural flow. And to me, that's just asking to turn this whole thing into a horizontal scrolling movement. So I took a few minutes and expanded this out into a single background plate that covers everything we need to see. Hopefully you're already starting to be able to visualize what this might look like in motion. Then I added the text and logo back into the right spots on this expanded layout, and we're ready to create a nice little animation without having to do all that much work. Here in After Effects, I'll import my design, making sure I choose Composition, Retain Layer Sizes, so I still have access to all the layers. It's created a composition for me from that design, and I still have access to all the elements separately, just like I did in Photoshop. There is one problem though. The size of this composition obviously isn't right for my social ad, but that's an easy fix. I'll just come up here to Composition Settings. I can actually change the size, length, or frame rate of the composition at any time, and I'm going to choose a preset from this dropdown. Right here in the list, which Adobe just updated in this new version, we have Social Media Portrait HD 1080 by 1920. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And even before I hit OK, I can see that this is exactly what we need. Great. And you can see from the bounding boxes of these layers, all of this still exists. It's just outside the visible area of my canvas now. So I can start animating these pieces, but I need a way for everything to be able to move at once to get that scrolling motion I wanted. After Effects makes this easy with something called parenting, which allows me to make some layers follow the movement of other layers. I think I'll use this bottom layer, white BG, as the place I'll do my main movement. So I'll select all the other layers, and then in the parent and link column, I can select that layer from this dropdown, or grab this little pick whip tool and just point to the layer I want to use. Since this is my main mover layer now, I'll click on this little color chip and change the color to fuchsia just so it's easier to keep track of things. Now any movement I make with this layer means everything else comes along for the ride. To actually animate this, I'll twirl open this layer to see my transform properties. I'll move my playhead up to 2 seconds, which is when I want this first movement to happen. And I'll click the little stopwatch next to position. That's going to hang on to this value at this time. Now I'll move forward to 3 seconds and drag that until I get to the next part of my layout. You'll see that this created another keyframe here, which will hold on to this value at this time. Thus, animation, right? Move up to 5 seconds, and I can just copy paste that last keyframe using Control-C, Control-V. Move up to 6 seconds, and I can also scrub the values down here in the timeline to get to that last position of my layout. Let's hit the spacebar to do a quick preview. Not a bad start. Let's smooth out this movement by selecting all those position keyframes. Right-click and choose Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease, or just hit the F9 key. Another preview. Much better. Since this BG Beans layer is separated out, and I can see it extends beyond the top and bottom of my frame, let's maybe move that down a little bit. Hit Home to go to the first frame of the animation. Hit P to expose just the position property, and click the stopwatch to create a keyframe to hold that value. Now I'll hit End to jump to the last frame and just drag that upward a little bit. Preview again. Yeah, that definitely added some life. Let's come back to the beginning of our animation again and see what we can do with this text. Since these were editable text layers in Photoshop, I can actually bring that functionality right into After Effects by selecting them both, then choosing Layer, Create, Convert to Editable Text. You'll notice that the icon changed down here on the layers, which means this is now fully editable. Now let's undo that. But along with letting me change the text, this also means I can take advantage of the text animation presets. In my Effects and Presets panel, I can just search for the preset I want to use, Slide and Pop In, which is one of the new presets included with the latest version. If I select both of my text layers and double-click that preset, it'll actually apply to both. Preview. I think I should set this to animate by character and make it just a touch slower. If I press U, I can see that preset created keyframes for me. I'll maybe drag these second keyframes just a bit later to slow things down, and yeah. But for the second layer, oops, I actually applied that preset at the beginning of the composition, so we're not seeing that animation where I want it to be. To fix this, I'll just drag the layer forward so it starts right at 3 seconds. I'll finish this off by adding a simple scale animation to the logo. First, I'll grab my anchor point tool up here and make sure this anchor point is centered up so my layer scales from the correct place. Then I'll hit S to reveal scale, and I'll click the stopwatch to create a keyframe for 100%. Move to the end and create another for 108. Let's push that first keyframe back a bit so it's happening while that moves into view, and let's see what we have. Okay, I could definitely keep adding details to make this fancier, but honestly, this is pretty good for something that just took me a few minutes. I'll export this by coming up to Composition, Add to Render Queue, choose one of the new H.264 presets, which will be perfect for social, and all right. Hopefully this little demo can give you a couple of ideas about ways you can look for easy wins like this on your own projects. And we're done. All right, this file is ready for delivery.
Cool, and now we are back with Kyle Hamrick live and in person virtually.
Hey.
So it's great to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here. I've had you as a guest on some of my live streams, so it's fun to be reverse here.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about some of what we've just gone through in that really great demo. We were actually just talking in the background while the demo was playing about how that's going from basically 0 to a finished project in 6 minutes. And I'd love to know a little bit about what are some of your favorite time-saving tricks that are part of how you can build something like that so quickly.
Yeah. And obviously, like, to be fair, there's some, a couple things I kind of hand wave, like, redesigning the back plate and stuff like that. But kind of aiming that at someone that's got, a design provided or something, and being asked to animate it, which I suspect is a common thing for a lot of folks that are maybe kind of those multi-purpose creatives. Um, I know that's a big chunk of the user base, probably folks that think of After Effects as this maybe scary thing, and it doesn't have to be. So I think a lot of what I've tried to do with recent tutorials and demos and stuff like that is trying to help people understand that After Effects maybe isn't nearly as scary as they've been thinking that it is. That it can actually be really accessible, especially if you already have some skills in video or design. And sometimes you can just make a couple keyframes. I think I made one, two, three, four. Made 4 keyframes, 6, and then applied 2 presets, and we were pretty much done. Is that about right? So, it can be easier than you think. Just get in and try it. It's really fun. I've been doing it, touching After Effects almost every day for like 16 years. So, approved.
That's really cool. And then you actually work with, at School of Motion, one of the people who created some of the new presets.
True. So we just launched a new course with Jake Bartlett, who I know made quite a few of those. I think the one that I used in the demo, the slide in and pop, whatever it's called, was one of his. I really like how a lot of the new presets take advantage of expression controls, and so you can have little drop-down menus and stuff like that that make them really usable and approachable. Again, especially for newer users who maybe they're not into like all the nerdy codey structural stuff that someone like me is, but they just want something to work and be able to just keep going with their day and not get stuck on tricky stuff.
That's really
Which reminds me, you asked Catie what her favorite of the new presets was, and mine is probably, even though I know how to build it myself, that a dynamic text box that will resize to text is just a preset now. And that's such a commonly needed thing. And not having to code it yourself, just, click 2 things and it's done and it's there. Perfect.
cool. So I'd also love to ask you about what's it like building, we call them demo assets, are the materials that we use to talk about new features. So while we're still building the features, you're building things, explaining how they work. There's this whole sort of iterative process there. And since then, we've all spent quite a lot of time with the Cool Beans coffee shop crew.
Yeah.
So what's that like?
It was a lot of fun. Apparently, I've figured out that, kind of building creative projects to fit very specific technical or teaching purposes is something that I'm pretty decent at, I guess. And it's really fun too, because it's a very creative problem solving kind of thing. And doing that with some of these new features as they were coming out, and sometimes as they were still developing. Some of the features that were in the final version weren't quite there yet when I was making some of those assets. So that was fun to navigate and fun to kind of probably like help push some of that development a little bit with some of the things I was trying to do. I know with my track mats demo that was at the booth at Adobe Max, I kind of tried to do the thing where, if you watch a cooking show and someone tries to like use the ingredient in 6 different ways in the thing, I think that's sort of where I ended up in that demo.
Yeah, and Catie, I'm curious from your side of things with the track mat. So we had Kyle working on building the projects. We had the engineering team building out the track mats. What was that like from your side?
So, like with working with the demo assets?
Yeah,
it was super easy. The great thing is a lot of the projects that I was making internally that I can't make quite as pretty as you and Kyle can. It was fundamentally, from the mechanical standpoint, really, really similar. So I actually used it as an opportunity to do my own skilling up, because I had this great project that Kyle had made, and I could be like, well, now I know how to do X, Y, and Z. And the more you practice giving the demo, which is the great thing about being at the booths at conferences, is you get to know the project in and out. So you can get really, really speedy by the end of it, and then start adding a little bit of extra flair if you feel creative enough.
That's a great thing to point out. It's also a great thing with the new presets. All of these pieces is you can use them as a launch point. We intentionally built the presets so that they aren't locked down. They're not like an effect where you don't know how they're built. If you can apply a preset, go, wow, this is really cool. I wonder how this works, and dig into it and see everything that goes into how it's constructed. And you can take it apart, edit it, make it your own. So everything is designed to be, you can get under the hood as much as you want. If you're an expressions nerd like me and you want to see what's the code working in the background, it's really fun to be able to dig into some of that stuff. And that's actually how I started to learn to code, was taking apart other people's expressions, copying and pasting people's scripts, learning about the different pieces that built up into something that was actually completing a full little workflow. So there's lots of learning material in there. What was it? Sorry, Kyle?
Same.
Oh,
yeah.
Websites for me, but still very similar principles.
Yeah, so it's all open. It's all designed to be, you can take it and make it your own. Everything in After Effects is a set of interchangeable building blocks that you can build in infinite configurations. And so, Kyle, talking about that's also how you got started. I'd also love to know, we were talking before the live stream a little bit about how we got to know the After Effects team. How did you originally get involved? Because we've been working together for a long time now.
Yeah. I mean, I'd been using After Effects for several years, but I mean, I got to know some of the team by just coming to conferences and honestly just kind of, I forget who I met first or anything like that, but I came to a smaller conference, After Effects World, which was in Seattle. We got to visit the After Effects offices, which was really cool, and just sort of got to know some of the team members. And over time, especially with things like the motion design Slack or other online forums, you interact with these folks a lot. You become friends with some of them, and end up getting to work on cool projects sometimes.
And I got started getting to know the team because I was really loud in the beta program back when there wasn't a public beta. But one of the things that's changed is we now have a public beta. And that's a big shift for us as a dev team, because that means that everybody using After Effects has the opportunity to weigh in on what we're building and see what's in there right now, see what's in development, and help shape the future of it. And that sounds sort of like a lofty, dramatic thing to say, but it's really true. This is how we refine and make changes to things, is based on what people are telling us is working, where they're running into issues. All of that stuff feeds into that process. And there's a real opportunity here to help shape the future of the tools that you use every day. And I think that's meaningful. And so we've seen that with everything we've shipped lately, is there's feedback coming in that changes things that we learn from. We're always learning from our users. And there's so many pieces there that really help drive that forward. And so it's all public now. You can go in the Creative Cloud app. There's a beta apps tab, and we update every single day. So there are actual internal dev builds. And there's some pretty exciting stuff in beta right now. I think probably the one that Kyle's pretty excited about, I see him smiling, is we have 3D model import, which is something that's been in the works for a very long time. And I'm already seeing people do some really cool stuff with it. And then it's exciting. This is a big step. And that's one that we've been waiting for that to go live for a while. So you can try that out today. It's all there, and that's one where we have so many things we know we can do. We have a big roadmap ahead of us, and we need feedback to know what's most important to do first. What do you need to be able to deliver something with 3D and 2D together in one? What's the thing that you need to really deliver some great 3D motion graphics? So that's just one piece in the beta. I think there's a couple other big exciting things. Catie, you want to talk a little about the properties panel? Because that's one that's been in there for a little while.
Yes, absolutely. I love the properties panel. I am a person who gets distracted by the timeline sometimes when I'm really, really focused on a project. So having the properties panel, which is, it makes things a lot easier. So essentially what the properties panel is it's this panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and it's, once you click a layer, it's going to show all of the properties contained within that layer. And you can actually keyframe on those properties. You can make changes on those properties from within that panel. So I don't have to twirl super deep into my layer stack and potentially get confused in my case, because I'm very easily distractible. So having that has just made my life so much easier from a demoing perspective. It's made me a much more confident After Effects user. And it means that now I have the confidence to just jump into a project. If somebody's like, hey, we're going to use, let's use one of Kyle's great coffee demo assets, but I really want the background of the lower third to be purple instead. Can you change that? I can now change that really quickly. So that's really exciting for me.
That's cool. And Kyle, also, you mentioned earlier that you have a couple new videos coming soon, and I think you're diving into some of these things.
Yeah. So I put out one a couple weeks ago. It overlapped with the Max product announcements that goes over the new features. And I gave a little sneak of Properties Panel and 3D, just kind of, since those are in beta. I try to use my platform to help push people into the beta too. I'll say, just from to help underscore some of the stuff that you were saying, as someone who's not on the Adobe team, I have seen suggestions and feedback and stuff like that become features. So the team does listen. They do want to know how you use the stuff, because people use After Effects in all kinds of different weird ways. So, letting them know how they can help make the product better for you is always important. And then if I didn't say this, I think I got lost in that. I'm about to be launching a video on the new track matte feature that'll be coming out next week on the School of Motion YouTube channel. And we also have a course that's about to come out all about making Mogerts, which is not a brand new feature, but a very useful feature, and kind of, not too distantly related from some of the presets that we were talking about.
Yeah, Mogerts are, to me, of everything that I wish I had when I was a motion designer since I've joined Adobe, Mogerts are top of that list in terms of, it would have saved me so much time. That's exciting. That sounds like a great course. So that'll be a lot of fun. I think we are about ready to wrap up. So I really want to thank both Catie and Kyle for joining us today. It's been great to have you. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you to everyone who's been chatting on Facebook and on YouTube. It sounds like there's a hot discussion of how to get one of these pillows. So I think they're in the Max store. I'm hoping somebody's been able to give you a link to those. But I want to say a huge thank you for sharing your time with us. And this is going to be one of our last meetups of the year, but we've got one more for you, and that is on November 30th. Erica Schisler and Dave Werner from the Character Animator team are going to be talking about all the great stuff you can do in bringing your characters to life in Character Animator. It's one of the most fun apps we have, so stay tuned for that. And thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.